Ghost calmly watched a helicopter land a few meters in front of him. The strong wind ruffled his blond hair. Now uncovered, his mask was in hand, dirty and torn. The ancient stared at his coach with fixated eyes, his red eyes of the mask that seemed to glow from the sun. When the helicopter landed, Hunk got down and waited for the agent to approach. "Still with that hair?" Hunk's muffled voice showed off a bit of humor. A sideways smile appeared on Ghost's lips. "William hates it." They both laughed a little and greeted each other menacingly. It seemed to be a while since they had last seen each other. Hunk's spy was difficult, time-consuming, and on the rare occasions when one of them had greeted a few days off to rest, the other was on the job. "How's the situation?" Hunk asked, watching him reload his weapons inside the helicopter, pick up grenades, ammunition, herbs, and finally a spare mask. "Pretty bad. Every second at least 2 people are dead. That ingests mass appears with no limit. I have no idea how the infected is doing that moment, but I can tell you that it's pretty bad. Who knows how many victims it's claimed or will claim," Ghost replied, putting the mask back on its face shortly afterwards, looking at the cloth uncovering the 2 suitcases still inside the helicopter. "This is something planned. We monitored the airport via satellite. They're infected all over the airport, and just like the infected, they're prowling the city right now," Hunk said, once again checking the rifle in his possession. "The BSAA takes care of the common infected. Our priority is the Type G infected." "Are those the weapons?" he asked. He watched Hunk approach with his cloth and pulled it away, revealing 2 large guns, similar to the Barrett sniper rifle, most accurately the model M107. However, the barrel was not really reinforced or consequence of thicker, as the gun was much heavier and had a large ammunition clip, similar to 100-round clips on LMGs. "Yes, they are. Strong enough to kill any threat known to humans and even more. The ammo capsules contain a strong chemical made from your blood. Any infected tissue will self-destruct mere contact with it. No matter how small, a direct hit causes a small explosion that releases a corrosive agent," Hunk said, lifting one of the ammunition capsules in front of Ghost, who looked at it cautiously. The capsule was reddish in color and had a few similar symbol of a snake swallowing its tail. He said more to himself than Hunk, repeating the only same mythological creature. But William prefers the Ouroboros rather than Ouroboros." Ghost then looked at him with an arched eyebrow, and although he couldn't see it, Hunk noticed the curiosity in his eyes. "One of Albert's plans I have discovered on my last mission. We need to get it over with and get to William. Let's go," Hunk explained quickly, picking up one of the guns and resting it on its back. Ghost did the same, catching a glimpse of Hunk signaling the helicopter pilot to stay there until they got back. The weapon itself was quite heavy, perhaps close to 20 kg. Both men stared at each other for a few moments, and after a nod, they walked towards the city. They knew where the creature was. They just had to follow the roars. The infected bit the head off of one of its victims as it moved down the street. Cars stopped in sight of it. They were merely violent and overturned as they escaped. Its tentacles grabbed its target and any of its line in sight, carrying only its large mass consumption. It didn't matter if it was just any human or an infected, trying to get a taste of flesh, taking advantage of its small rampage, feasting on its carrion, only to be used as food too. Its instincts were primitive to the next certain extent. It only thought about eating to survive, conquer territory to reproduce, and of course, however, its intelligence was considerably greater than that of ordinary infected, like the ones that had devoured. It had chased the prey earlier, and to its misfortune, the prey escaped. It tried to devour another prey, while at the same time trying to protect its own kind. That prey was too strong and it stood in its way in an attempt to conquer its territory. It needed more mass, and it needed to get stronger and eliminate the threat that had almost killed it twice. Shots were then heard coming from the side. The creature turned and its many eyes were fixated on the more prey firing in its direction. 3 policemen, 2 in one car, 1 in another, 2 of them with a rifle and 1 with its only service pistol. Cops behave enough to buy the time for the civilians to escape, or too foolish to think that they could do anything about it. The monster roared and ran towards the officers, who stopped shooting and quickly turned around and escaped a certain death. One of its tentacles grabbed one of the cops, taking him to its mouth and quickly consuming him. Its arms were reinforced with layers of bones that served as some kind of exoskeleton. Like most of its body, its claws were even bigger, and its body even more robust. 2 large arms protruded from its back and resembled as bat wings with claws on their tips, similar to William Birkin's mutation years ago. The creature threw its arms forward, and its claws piercing the other policeman's body, pulling him towards it, devouring him as his eyes watched his latest prey hide in a restaurant. Calmly the monster approached, and his body was heavy like the ground was shaking with every step it took. But in one swift movement, its arm crossed the concrete of the restaurant with extreme ease, its fist closing around its body of prey, accidentally crushing it but still consuming its remains. That area was perfect. Lots of prey nearby, no other apparent predators, perfect for staying. However, its eyes focused on a familiar presence, and its creature turned its body towards the huge figure not far away. It recognized him instantly. It looked just like another prey, only it's another predator, responsible for its near death. The pupils of its eyes clenched as a predatory manner, and an angry growl echoed throughout the now almost deserted streets. Ghost was lying on its ground, ignoring the people who were running desperately around him. In like his hands was the G-gun, resting on the Absol. The aim was centered on the creature's chest. 2 shots was all it needed, no matter where he hit. One to kill, the other to make sure that it was dead. The creature growled and began to move towards the agent with its high speed in every step. The noise was massive. Each step seemed to break the concrete beneath its feet. A smile appeared on Ghost's lips and he pulled the trigger. The gun went off and the kick was so strong that it flew almost out of place. The noise was so loud that if the agent wasn't wearing any protection, hearing this would be damaged. The bullet penetrated the creature's robust body, the capsule exploding in his system. A hole formed in his enormous torso, and blood practically exploded from the wound. The creature roared loudly in pain, its roar echoing throughout the destroyed streets, frightening the nearby survivors and making the team of reporters reporting the whole scene and wonder whether they should stay there any longer or get out as soon as possible. The creature knelt down, leaning its huge arm to avoid falling face first into the pavement. Ghost for his part stood up, reloaded his gun, and picked up the capsule that had fallen to the ground. His eyes watched as the components act on the monster. Its grayish skin was turning red. Its exoskeleton was slowly breaking apart, with small parts falling to the ground after one another. Blood began to ooze out of its huge eyes, which was gradually exploding. Despite this, the thing was resilient, and it was still trying to get up. Its regeneration has activated and was fighting bravely against the component that was corrupting its body. The monster was going to die anyway. To put an end to it, another shot was heard, this time from an unseen location on top of the building nearby. Hunk moved away from the edge of the building and reloaded his gun, also picking up the capsule that had fallen and watching for a few moments as the creature's body fell to the ground, and then he turned and walked away. "Come on, Agent. I'll help you go after that target," Hunk said over the radio. Ghost watched as the creature's body attacked itself, destroying itself from the inside out, and then, like Hunk, he walked away, into an alleyway where the eyes of the media could no longer see him. "What an honor, sir," Ghost said, putting the G-gun on his back. "Stop that, sir. We're comrades now," Hunk said over the radio. In response, Ghost just smiled. "Ghost to HQ. Fred eliminated. Going after Frederick now," the agent said, meeting Hunk at the back of one of the buildings for. They were both watched as the BSAA trucks moved towards the monster's location. "Roger that, Ghost. The target is 23 kilometers west of the city, and it doesn't seem to be alone. A helicopter is waiting for you." After that, the two looked at each other and nodded, before starting to run towards the helicopter. Claire and Sherry ran through the wreckage. The destruction caused by the creature not only killed many people, but also attracted unwanted attention. All of the infected who had been at the airport were now wandering around. Two decided to intervene and help the BSAA deal with the situation, to try their best to prevent the city from becoming another Raccoon City. "What's the plan?" Sherry asked as she saw some zombies walking ahead. The area was stained with blood, but not far away that they could see some BSAA vehicles. "Do what we do to prevent this from getting worse. Do you have your gun?" Claire asked, glancing at the girl next to her. "No, I lost it at the airport. I only have my knife," the girl replied, and Claire crouched slightly, lifted the hem of her pants, and took out a small pistol with a capacity of only 7 bullets. Sherry picked up the pistol and checked it all quickly, taking an extra clip that woman held out towards her. "You know what to do now." That was all that Claire said, just before they started shooting at the zombies. Sherry followed a few steps behind, shooting those that Claire couldn't see. Her shots were long, a greater precision to save ammo. Her eyes soon went to the huge hole in the wall created by the giant infected escape from the airport. There were a few more zombies approaching, but apart from them, she also saw some lickers. "Claire!" she called out to the woman, who immediately looked in the direction of the characteristic roar of those things. Claire looked at Sherry over her shoulder and nodded in silent agreement, and soon they separated. Claire ran towards the zombie head while Sherry ran to the left, heading towards the side of the huge hole in the wall. Claire shot one of the zombies and grabbed another one by the neck. The licker roared and advanced towards her, as some of the other zombies who began to run. One of its lickers flicked its tongue at Claire, who pushed a zombie in front of her, using it as a shield. Seeing this, Sherry fired at the zombies nearby at the licker, who now had a zombie on its tongue. Claire dodged it to the side as one of the lickers leapt towards her, taking advantage of the momentum of her movement. She turned her body and landed a kick to the head of one of the zombies that ran towards her at the same time as turning her body, firing at the second licker, who jumped to the side in an attempt to dodge its shots. Sherry moved away from the wall when one of the zombies tried to attack her, and quickly countered with a kick to the back of the knee, causing the zombie to kneel on its affected leg, and turning her body, she also finished off with a straight kick, causing the zombie to hit one of its head hard on the concrete and fall to the ground motionless. The licker she had shot earlier ran towards her and raised its huge arm to attack her. A vertical sideways attack from below. The girl dodged by throwing its torso onto the side and countered with the shots to the creature's head until she ran out of bullets. The monster in turn stood upright on its hind legs and tried to another attack. However, Sherry was quicker and turned her body, landing a kick to the licker's head, causing the creature to fall backwards onto the ground. Without giving the licker any time to recover, she leapt towards it and plunged her knife into its chest again and again until the creature was motionless. Claire pulled her knife out of the zombie's head and turned around when she heard another noise behind her. As she did so, she reflexively dodged the tongue of one of the lickers, but grunted as she both felt her forearm being pierced by the tongue. Ignoring the pain, she grabbed the licker's tongue and in one swift movement pulled it towards her, sending the creature hurtling towards her, something no ordinary woman could do, or any other human being. Quickly, the woman kicked the licker in the head and shot the creature until it remained still. She heard the last of the lickers approaching behind her, as well as Sherry's shots at the creature. She then turned around and fired at the creature too, which leapt towards her in an attempt to decapitate her. Claire dodged while crouching down quickly and turned, unloading her clip onto the licker, until the creature fell to the ground was also motionless. She gasped a little and stood up, reloading her weapon. A slight grunt escaped her lips as she looked around on her wound on her forearm. It was a large hole that she could see right through it, and it looked like her bones were slightly separated. It was times where she wished she had Sherry's regeneration. "Are you all right?" Speaking of Sherry, Claire looked over at her with a small smile and shook her head in response. But before they decided to move, they heard another loud noise coming from somewhere in the direction of the city. She turned towards the noise. It sounded like an explosion, mixed with a shot from a very strong person. Claire heard it clearly, and the noise was perhaps coming from the area too into the town center. Maybe some kind of sniper rifle. It wasn't too familiar to her. It sounded like a lot like a .50. Shortly afterwards, they heard the same noise. From the din, chaos faded. Claire blinked a few times. The creature had faced before meeting Sherry was large and strong. It certainly would take a large group to finish it off. Her thoughts were soon interrupted by the sound of a low cry. She turned around suddenly, causing Sherry to look at her with a startled and attentive. "What is it?" the girl asked. But all Claire could do was walk over and the overturned car next to the destroyed wall. Both girls approached. The sound of the crying became louder. They bent down and could see both a man trapped in the wreckage of his car. "There's someone down there," Claire said. Standing up quickly and looking around, there was no one looking at them. No zombies or lickers sneaking around. With a slight sigh, she crouched down slightly and placed her hands on the car. With effort, the woman began to lift the car. She grunted with some difficulty, but managed to lift the vehicle above her head as Sherry pulled the man to safety. The man grunted in pain as he was pulled. His leg apparently had been crushed, but at least he was okay. As Sherry pulled him away, Claire lowered her gun again and looked around, checking to make sure no one had seen. "Are you all right?" Sherry asked, she right next to the man, who nodded and somewhat frantically. Yes, thank you so much. But my leg." Claire looked at him sympathetically. His leg was pretty in bad shape, but hopefully they wouldn't have to go as far as amputating it. He just wouldn't be able to walk anymore without at least a slight limp. "Come on, we'll get you to safety," Claire said, putting the man's arms around her shoulder and helping him up. She controlled herself not to lift the man up or pull him too hard, another attribute that developed over the years. Or perhaps it has always been there, but she never noticed it. They led the civilian an area ahead. The BSAA had set up a small area north to the airport. There were a few tents dotted around and a few vehicles parked, ready for the operation they would have to carry it out, if it hadn't been for the monster that escaped. They arrived just in time to see some trucks leaving the direction of the center. They were soon attended by some members of the BSAA and taken to the man to one of the medical tents. Well, Claire was taken. Sherry just accompanied her. Soon the night came after, and Claire finally left the medical tent after confirming to the doctors that she hadn't needed the T-virus vaccine. As a member of TerraSave and the sister of a very protective brother, she took doses every 10 months for prevention, like a flu shot. The woman sighed deeply as she left the tent. All she wanted was the moment to have a shower and food in bed. But all she would have to do was go back to work the next day, since she hadn't finished everything she had to do that day. She thought alone gave her a headache. She ran her hand through her hair and walked towards the tent that Sherry said she would be. As soon as she arrived, she entered the tent, and the first thing she saw was Sherry sitting in the chair in front of the table. Her arms were around her body with a curious expression on her face. She looked at the child caught doing something that she shouldn't have. The moment she looked away, she realized that she ended up making a similar expression. Sitting on a box in the far corner and next to one of the beds present was Chris Redfield, still dressed in BSAA tactical outfit, with his bag on his back, one hand resting on his thigh, and not a very friendly expression, but couldn't help but cringe a little when he looked at her. Considering that he knew that she was on business, she'd say it was Barry that told him that Sherry had gone along, or someone from the BSAA. Maybe TerraSave itself. Nah, it was definitely Barry. "Hi, Chris. Surprised to see you here," I said sheepishly, and Chris grunted a little as he stood up. His posture was high, and so was his face. "I thought you said you were going on a TerraSave mission. Something really simple and easy to do and you'd be home soon." I believed you. Not imagine my surprise when Barry called me and said that you'd been on the outbreak at the airport, and that Sherry had to come with you. He said a few steps slowly towards the table, standing next to Sherry, who was looking at Claire, and with that look knew they were in trouble. "Not only you did try to hide it from me, but you also lied when I asked exactly if Sherry would go with you." Claire walked slowly towards the other end of the table, leaning on it with a sigh. Look, Chris, both my job and hers were supposedly easy. We'd be home before you even got back from the BSAA. For what it's worth, I would never have put her at risk if I had known I had the remote chance of... I know, Claire. He cut her off, making her stare. The anger was there, of course, but also tiredness. What annoys me is that she had came. She's almost an adult, and she's more mature than anyone else her age. I trained the both of you exactly situations like this. I know what you're capable of. He also leaned on the table, alternating his gaze between the two women. What annoys me is that you didn't tell me. What, you didn't think I'd be against it? I've said before, the fact is that I don't like. That doesn't mean you can do it. If that's what you want, you don't like what I do either. Claire then ran her hand to the back of her neck. The silence prevailed for a few moments. Sorry, she apologized after a while, and Chris just took another deep breath, taking a single step away from the table. Next time at least let me know, and answer my calls. What happened to your phone? He asked, as if they had just only remembered. They reached into their pockets for their devices. Jesus, the airport was still attacked. Not the city, but still the signal. Sorry, that was just in the middle of the attack. I didn't even think about it, Sherry said, only realizing his missed calls. My mission was a complete failure. This made Chris look at her sharply, and Claire just gave her a friendly look. What happened? He asked, crossing his arms. Sherry put one hand on top of hers, and her eyes fixated on the table. There was a look of sadness on her face. The girl I was with, Selena, she died in the attack. That monster killed her. She ran a hand through her hair and lowered her head. Don't be so hard on yourself. Unfortunately. I know, she interrupted Chris. I had no control over this situation. That sort of thing happens, but what's the point? Wait. It wasn't supposed to happen. She was one of the victims kidnapped by the group that had a relationship with Veltro years ago. She survived all that just to die here. It's not fair. Chris sighed again and sat down by a nearby chair. None of it is, Claire said, also sitting down on the chair next to Sherry, facing Chris. So how did you two manage to get out of the airport? Chris asked, leaning his arms on the table, arching an eyebrow when both girls exchanged look. What? That makes the masked man was here, Sherry said, and Chris's eyes widened a little. He moved his torso away from the table and leaned back on his chair. He was serious, but didn't look surprised. He's the one who helped me get out of there. I was fighting some lickers. Selena was close and I couldn't get to her. Some of the lickers ran up to her and he saved her. And then he helped me. Chris crosses his arms. Why is that every time there's an outbreak he's involved? He asked to no one in particular. Do you think he's responsible? Claire asked. I don't know. I don't think he is. Not directly. But he's always involved. I'd say it's suspicious to say the least, he replied. Well, he's not against us, and he's not an enemy, Sherry said, drawing the attention of both Redfields. Have you found out anything? Claire asked. Well, yes, but not much. He goes by the codename Ghost and works for a secret organization, away from anyone's eyes. Practically, that's from what I found out. He works to eliminate biological weapons and everything related to their creations. You know how those we've arrested? His job is to kill them. Both Claire and Chris watched as they took a laptop from the backpack and placed it on the table. That explains why those suspects went missing. They're dead, Claire said, and Chris snorted with the same disdain. Good fucking riddance by me, he said, typing something into his laptop, and the curiosity got the both of them. Here, while you were in that medical tent, this happened earlier today. He walked towards the laptop towards them, and they watched the reporter's footage as they captured the moment Ghost fired at the huge creature, standing in the middle of the street. The creature had mutated significantly, and they both immediately recognized the resemblance, much to their chagrin. What kind of weapon is that? Claire asked, after seeing the man that shot the creature on top of the drop to its knees. They watched as the body began to break down as the creature itself was in agony. I don't have the exact idea, but look how quickly it mobilized that thing. Not only that, but it killed it. It looked so corrosive effect or something. The ammo was made of some kind of substance maybe, Sherry said, leaning her arms on the table. Whatever organization this guy works for, they're obviously very well armed. and it looks like he wasn't alone, Chris said after a second shot, coming from the monster's right, but still from an unknown location. He mentioned another agent someone called the Reaper. He also mentioned that his team to bring the G-type weapons, Sherry said. So they have specific weapons for specific types of infected, Claire said, as a form of questioning than an actual statement. Well, I don't know, but he uses a larger caliber weapons than usual. Maybe that's the case, Sherry said. I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, we've had a lot of information thanks to him. But why are they hiding? The kind of weaponry that could be used on everyone? Imagine how much easier the mission would be, Chris said to himself, and Sherry swallowed a little as she remembered the agent's harsh words. Harsh but true. He said that because we were eliminated by the government. All laws we have to obey, all rules and bureaucracy we have. They don't, she said, and Chris just shook his head, but he once again looked at the video on his laptop. I think he has access to all of our data. Her words caught the eyes and the attention of two Redfields. Somehow he knew about the confidential information. He mentioned the BSAA meetings. He mentioned Lansdale's relations with Veltro. He mentioned our meeting with the African government because of an old intrigue. This information we don't release to the public. Chris ran a hand through his short hair. Well, that's great. Now we have an unknown organization with access to our systems. But how the hell is that even possible? Chris said to no one in particular. I don't know, but the answer questions regarding those emails, Claire said, noticing Sherry lost in thought. The girl was a little reluctant to say more. If they really did have web access to TerraSafe's system, then it made sense for him to know her name, to have those scars, those marks, the exact places she remembered. Perhaps it just wasn't a coincidence. The more she thought about it, the more it made sense. He disappeared without a trace one night, and then those anonymous emails began to appear, secrets began to reveal, and the terrorists began to be killed. But she still hasn't forgotten that it was one of those anonymous emails that Chris had found her with Claire while they were trying to wander from town to town just after Raccoon. But it couldn't be, could it? It all made sense, and at the same time it hadn't. Sherry? She looked at Claire. She remembered how much the woman had suffered from those days, both from the nightmares and trauma that are superhuman attributes. She was afraid of saying something and making her return to that state. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just felt that I was just trying to remember something else. Sherry made up an excuse, although she knew it, both Redfields could read her well. To her relief, they didn't seem to resist any longer. Did you see anything else? A symbol? A tattoo that might indicate something? Any clues to guide us? Chris asked. Sherry ran a hand through the side of his neck. He calls the gun the Silver Ghost, if that helps. Chris shook his head. Well, no, nothing unusual apart from the fact that he's incredibly skilled, Chris. I saw him fight our four lickers at once. He fought with this giant monster face to face. If all the ancients in his organization are skilled as he is, then I dare say it's an organization as dangerous as Umbrella itself, Sherry said, and although she realized that Chris certainly thought he was exaggerating, he wouldn't go back on what she said. Well, she saw, and she hadn't seen anywhere else. The only people that came in close were Chris and Claire himself. Well, I guess it could be worse, Claire said after a while of silence. Worse than an unknown group with unlimited access to our information? How exactly? Chris asked, lowering the screen of his laptop. I don't know. They could have used it against us, she said, shaking her head. And he knows our secrets in the government, Sherry said, interrupted the small argument. To sure wasn't sure. He said that our government is a loyal customer on the black market. He must know something that we don't. It's not exactly a surprise not after Lansdale, Chris said, crossing his arms and putting his laptop away in his backpack. But how far does it go? What else in the government possession? They could very well be behind some of the outbreaks, Claire said, watching Chris get up from his chair with a tired expression. Look, I haven't rested since I left home. I'd rather talk about it another time, with one or two people, different people. Preferably get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow, he said, stretching as he walked towards the tent, being watched by the other girls. Are you staying here? Claire asked, and Chris turned around with a neutral expression. Of course, I have to look after my idiot little sister and her offspring. Seriously, sometimes you two are just so much alike, and it's the only thing he said before leaving the place. Two ancients were walking along the desolated road. The attentive eyes scanned the park at night. The unusual area to park a car. It was very close to the highway and there was nothing there. Ahead was Frederick's car. The driver's door was open and the headlights were still on. Ghost and Hunk looked at each other and began to approach the car from different sides. Ghost from the right, Hunk from the left. Guns pointed at the vehicle. As they approached and looked in surprise at Frederick's body lying on the ground. Blood was oozing from the bullet hole in his chest. The two agents approached the body and their eyes surveyed the area of the scene. Someone cornered him and killed him. But other than that, they were talking. There were heavy footsteps coming from the passenger side, Hunk said as he analyzed it, kneeling next to the body. Whoever did it, they're gone. The footprints ran towards the forest, Ghost said, sighing slightly. Someone did us a favor. Yes, but what's the price? Hunk asked as he approached the suitcase and on the hood of the car. On the mark was something small and cynical, like a bottle of some substance. Ghost HQ, the target is dead. Someone arrived before us and took the contents of the briefcase. It could be all a virus sample, Ghost said over his radio, looking at the surrounding forest for a few moments. Roger that, Ghost. If the target is dead, then get back to HQ. William wants to proceed with the Wesker plan. Ghost arched an eyebrow in slightly confusion, this being the first time he heard such plan. I found out from my last mission where the hideout is that Albert used for a few years. There's a chance that he's there, and although I doubt it, even if he isn't, we could still get some important information, Hunk explained, as he noticed his partner's confusion. Ghost nodded in understanding. Good, Ghost out, he said, gripping the side of his handled rifle. Let's get to the helicopter. We'll worry about it later. Hunk nodded in confirmation, and both agents walked towards the helicopter.